My ex's fiancé found our texts. You won't believe what I did next. When her message popped up, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was like a sudden drop into icy waters, unexpected and unsettling. Let's rewind. 4 years ago, life was different. I had a steady job as an assistant manager at a home improvement store. It was physically demanding, sure, but I loved it. The sense of accomplishment that came from a hard day's work was rewarding, and it gave me a sense of purpose and belonging. My relationship with my boyfriend at the time was strong, or so I thought. We had been together for 5 years, and it felt like we were on the same path, building a future together. But life has its way of throwing unexpected challenges at you. One busy afternoon at the store, we were short-staffed. A pallet needed moving, and in my eagerness to help, I twisted wrong. It was just a small misstep, a momentary lapse in judgment that I'd later replay in my head countless times. The pain was immediate and sharp, shooting down my leg like a bolt of electricity. I tried to brush it off, convinced that it would pass. But it didn't. The diagnosis was a bad lumbar disc herniation. Suddenly, everything shifted. There were doctor visits, surgery, and a cocktail of pain meds that left me in a haze. My job, which had been a cornerstone of my identity, slipped away. I found myself grappling with not just physical pain, but an emotional abyss that I had never faced before. Depression settled over me like a thick fog, and with it came weight gain and a loss of self-esteem. Throughout this ordeal, my boyfriend stayed by my side. Or at least, that's what I thought. I clung to him like a lifeline, believing that his presence was a constant in my spiraling world. But as the months dragged on, his demeanor changed. He became distant, his eyes clouded with a weariness that hadn't been there before. One evening, as we sat in the dim light of our living room, he spoke words that would echo in my mind for years to come. "I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep you warm," he said, his voice a mix of frustration and resignation. At that moment, my world shattered. He left, and with him went the future I had imagined. I was angry, but more than that, I was hurt. It was a raw, deep-seated pain that seemed to take root in my very soul. For a while, I was lost. I moved back in with my mom, a place I had left years ago with dreams of independence and a life of my own. But in those familiar walls, I began to rebuild. It wasn't easy. Every day was a battle against my own mind and body. But slowly I found my footing. I retrained, found a stable job, and worked tirelessly to regain some semblance of normalcy. Last year, I took a leap of faith and bought a small condo. It was a symbol of my resilience, a testament to the fact that I was no longer the broken woman he left behind. Then, out of the blue, my ex messaged me. Seeing his name flash on my phone was like opening a door to the past, one I had firmly locked away. His initial messages were innocuous enough. A simple, "How are you?" followed by, "I always wondered if you hated me." It was a dumb question, really. After all, he had walked out on me when I needed him most. Did he expect gratitude? But as the days passed, his messages grew more frequent and less innocent. He spoke of regret, of bad timing, and even dared to ask if I ever thought about us. It was confusing, stirring up emotions I thought I had buried long ago. Part of me wanted to tell him exactly what I thought, to unleash the anger that simmered beneath the surface. But I held back, unsure of where these conversations were leading. Then came the bombshell. A message from a number I didn't recognize, asking me if my ex was trying to get back together with me behind her back. It was his fiancée. Her words were laced with suspicion and hurt, emotions I knew all too well. My heart ached for her, for the position she found herself in. In that moment, everything became clear. I wasn't just protecting myself, I was standing up for the truth. Without hesitation, I sent her screenshots of our conversations. It wasn't done out of spite, but out of a sense of justice. If I were in her shoes, I'd want to know the truth. I'd want to know if the man I was about to marry was quietly lining up a plan B. The fallout was immediate. My ex's angry messages flooded in, each one dripping with venom and blame. He called me a bitter piece of work, accused me of wanting to ruin his life. But I knew better. This wasn't about revenge. It was about integrity, about ensuring that she had all the information before making a life-changing decision. As the days passed, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. There was a time when his words would have crushed me, when I would have internalized the blame, but not anymore. I had come too far, fought too hard to let him drag me back into that darkness. Life is funny that way. It throws curveballs, tests your strength, and challenges your resolve. But in those moments of adversity, you find out who you truly are. I learned that I am resilient, that I can weather the storm and come out stronger on the other side. In the end, I realized that I wasn't bitter. I was free. Free from the past, free from the pain, and free to embrace the future with open arms. I wished his fiancée the strength to make her own choices, to listen to her heart, and to find her own truth. As for me, I had already found mine. The days following the revelation felt surreal, as if I were walking through a dream where the air was thick with tension and unspoken words. Each morning, I'd check my phone with a mixture of dread and defiance, half expecting another barrage of angry texts from my ex. Yet, as the hours turned into days, the messages dwindled, replaced by an eerie silence that spoke volumes of the turmoil I had left behind. I found myself reflecting on the woman I had become through this ordeal. The journey back to myself had been long and arduous, marked by setbacks and small victories that felt monumental at the time. I remembered the nights spent lying awake, staring at the ceiling, questioning if I'd ever feel whole again. But now there was a quiet strength within me, a resilience that I had earned through the trials I faced. In moments of solitude, I often thought of his fiancée. Her courage to reach out to me, a stranger in her life, was commendable. It was a testament to her intuition, her unwillingness to turn a blind eye to the whispers of doubt that must have plagued her. I hoped she found clarity in the truth, and that it would guide her in making decisions that were best for her. A part of me wanted to reach out, to offer support or a listening ear. After all, we were two women caught in the web of a man's indecision. But I knew this was her journey now, and she had to walk it in her own way. As I moved through my daily routine, I was struck by the realization that my life was finally my own. The condo I had purchased no longer felt like a refuge from the world, but a home filled with possibilities. I spent weekends adding personal touches to the space, painting walls in soothing colors, and filling shelves with books and trinkets that spoke to my soul. Each item was a reminder of my journey, a piece of the puzzle that was my new life. Friends noticed the change in me. They commented on the lightness in my demeanor, the spark that had returned to my laughter. We'd gather for dinners or coffee, and I'd share snippets of the past few months, careful to shield them from the darker moments that I still grappled with in private. Their support was unwavering, grounding me in the knowledge that I was not alone, even when the shadows of doubt crept in. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sun dip below the horizon, I allowed myself to acknowledge the scar that remained from my past relationship. It was a part of me now, a reminder of the lessons learned and the strength found in vulnerability. I thought about forgiveness, about letting go of the anger that had once consumed me. It wasn't about absolving him of his actions, but rather freeing myself from the chains of resentment. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. I realized that sometimes, in the midst of chaos, we find the clarity we need to move forward. This experience had stripped away the illusions I held about love and loyalty, leaving behind a raw, unfiltered truth that was both painful and liberating. As the days turned into weeks, I embraced the rhythm of my new life. There were moments of lingering sadness, yes, but they were overshadowed by the joy of rediscovering myself. I began to dream again, to envision a future filled with possibilities instead of limitations. In time, the memories of my past relationship would fade, becoming mere echoes in the corridors of my mind. But the lessons would remain, guiding me as I navigated the complexities of life and love. I was no longer the woman who had been left behind, but someone who had found the strength to forge her own path. Ultimately, I realized that the end of one chapter was merely the beginning of another. And as I stood on the precipice of my new life, I was ready to take the leap, trusting that whatever lay ahead, I was strong enough to face it. One evening, as I sat on my balcony with a steaming cup of herbal tea clasped in my hands, the gentle breeze ruffled the pages of the book I had half-heartedly attempted to read. I found myself lost in thought, reflecting on the intricacies of human relationships. how they could be both beautifully complex and heartbreakingly simple. It was a moment of introspection, a quiet pause in the chaos that had become my recent history. I thought back to the messages my ex had sent, their bitterness still echoing in the recesses of my mind. His words had been a clumsy attempt to deflect blame, to paint me as the antagonist in a story where he refused to acknowledge his own shortcomings. Yet, despite the venom in his words, I felt a strange sense of pity for him. He was a man caught in the web of his own making, unable to see beyond his immediate desires and the trail of hurt they left in their wake. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow across the cityscape, I allowed myself to breathe deeply, savoring the tranquility of the moment. It struck me how far I had come from the person I once was, unsure, afraid, and burdened by the weight of expectations, both my own and those imposed upon me by others. Now, I was learning to let go of those burdens, to trust in my own journey and the lessons it had taught me. I thought about his fiancée again, the courage it must have taken for her to reach out to me, to confront the uncomfortable truth of her partner's duplicity. In a way, she was the catalyst for this new chapter in my life, her vigilance prompting a confrontation with the past that I had long avoided. I hoped she would find the strength to face whatever decisions lay ahead, to prioritize her own happiness over the comfort of familiarity. In my quiet moments, I often considered reaching out to her, offering a bridge of understanding and solidarity. But I knew that this was not my place. Her path was her own to walk, just as mine had been. I could only hope that she would find the clarity and courage she needed to make choices that aligned with her true self. Time, they say, is the great healer. And as the weeks turned into months, I felt the truth of that adage enveloping me like a warm embrace. The raw immediacy of the hurt and betrayal began to soften, replaced by a sense of peace and acceptance. I immersed myself in the things that brought me joy, painting, writing, and exploring the city with friends who had become my chosen family. I started a new project at work, one that challenged me and reignited my passion for my career. It was a chance to redefine myself professionally, to step out from the shadows of my past achievements and failures and forge a new identity. Each day I was reminded of the resilience that had brought me to this point, the strength that had carried me through the darkest times. One night, as I lay in bed, the moonlight casting silvery patterns on the walls, I found myself smiling at the thought of the future. It was a future that was no longer overshadowed by the specter of my past relationship, but was rich with promise and potential. I had learned to be gentle with myself, to embrace vulnerability as a source of strength rather than a weakness. In the end, I understood that love was not about possessing another person, but about finding harmony within oneself. It was about being open to possibilities and allowing oneself to be vulnerable without fear of judgment or rejection. This newfound understanding was liberating, a beacon guiding me toward healthier, more fulfilling connections. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey I had undertaken. It had been painful and challenging, but it had also been transformative. I was no longer defined by the heartache of my past, but by the strength and wisdom it had imparted. And as I closed my eyes, I knew that whatever the future held, I was prepared to face it with courage and hope. In the quiet moments of the early morning, I often found myself reflecting on the web of connections that life had woven around me. The intricate interplay of events, decisions, and emotions that had led me to this point felt almost poetic in its complexity. It was as though every thread of my past had been woven with purpose, guiding me through the labyrinth of my own experiences toward a clearer understanding of who I was and who I wanted to become. I had always been someone who sought meaning in every situation, who believed that even the most painful experiences held valuable lessons. And this chapter, tumultuous as it was, proved no different. It had shown me the resilience of my spirit, the depth of my capacity for forgiveness, and the importance of setting boundaries to protect my heart. One morning, as the sun began to peek over the horizon, casting a gentle glow through my curtains, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over me. The kind of peace that comes from knowing that you have faced your demons and emerged stronger on the other side. It was a revelation that filled me with a quiet confidence, a certainty that I could handle whatever life might throw my way. I thought back to the beginning of this whirlwind, the moment when my ex's fiancé had first reached out to me. In retrospect, her message had been a gift, a jarring but necessary wake-up call that forced me to confront the remnants of a past I had tried to bury. It was a reminder that sometimes closure doesn't come wrapped in pretty packages. Sometimes it arrives in the form of messy, uncomfortable truths that demand to be acknowledged. As I pondered this, I found myself feeling a sense of kinship with her, despite the fact that we had never met. In some ways, we were kindred spirits, both of us caught in the crossfire of someone else's indecision and deceit. She had shown remarkable bravery in reaching out to me, and I hoped that wherever she was finding the strength to reclaim her own narrative. In the days that followed, I focused on nurturing the parts of myself that had been neglected during the chaos. I spent long afternoons painting, allowing the vibrant colors to express emotions that words could not. I wrote prolifically, pouring my thoughts into journals that chronicled not only my struggles, but also my triumphs. And I surrounded myself with people who uplifted me, whose laughter and warmth reminded me of the beauty that existed in the world. The more I immersed myself in these pursuits, the more I realized how much I had grown. I was no longer defined by the shadows of my past relationship, but by the strength and clarity that had emerged from it. I had learned to trust in my own judgment, to listen to the quiet voice within that guided me toward authenticity and self-compassion. Occasionally, I would catch glimpses of my ex in the peripheries of my thoughts, his presence a faint echo of what once was. Yet, even those memories held no power over me now. They were simply part of a story that had run its course, a chapter that had taught me invaluable lessons about love, loss, and the resilience of the human heart. As I continued to embrace this new chapter, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey I had undertaken. It had been fraught with challenges, but it had also been rich with lessons that had shaped me into the person I was becoming. And as I stood on the precipice of the future, I knew that I was ready to face it with courage, hope, and a heart open to whatever possibilities might come my way. The sun had fully risen now, bathing my home in a warm golden light. I stepped out onto my balcony, the cool morning air a gentle caress against my skin. As I looked out at the city below, I felt a deep sense of contentment settle within me. This was my life, imperfect, unpredictable, and utterly beautiful in its complexity. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace with it. Subscribe for more stories.